So, good evening. Welcome once again, guys. So, let's begin our class again with beautiful quote. No masterpiece was created by a lazy artist. So, guys, with these beautiful lines, let's begin our today's class. So, guys, today we are going to talk about modern analytical techniques. So, yesterday we read about basic techniques, right? So, today we'll go into we'll study in depth what are these modern technologies, how are they helping food analysts, so all those things, right? So, guys, before going to techniques, so let's understand the basic why food needs to be analyzed, why food is so complex that a simple technology is almost it does not give appropriate results. So by the time as food industries they develop, they come up with new foods, so we also have to keep evolving our technology so that it can be analyzed and safe and healthy food can reach consumers. So guys, first of all, food analysis, if you see, it's a discipline dealing with development, application and study of analytical procedures for characterizing the property of food and its constituents. So food analysis also, guys, it's a complete separate discipline which is thriving every day to ensure that the properties or the characteristics of the food and its constituents can be further broken down and it can be studied so that tomorrow in case we need any parameter, if we want to study any parameter about the food, that is readily available, right? So, next point, all food products, whether raw or processed, are analyzed to provide information about a wide variety of different characteristics, including composition, structure, physiochemical properties, and sensory attributes. So, yeah, this is a self explanatory point, be it a raw food or a processed food. So, each, be it any food, basically. So, those foods can be tested. We have such a latest technology which was not possible in the basic technology which we read yesterday, right? So now with the advent of new technology, new methods and new instrumentation, complex instrumentation, so now we can completely study the composition of the food, even the structure of the food, which was not possible during earlier ages, right? And now even physiochemical properties of the food can be studied at a single time. At a same time, we need not to carry out the separate test for physical studies and chemicals properties of the food. This can be conducted in a single step. And also sensory attributes, right? So guys, and I think that's a no brainer. These things, why do we test these things? Because that is very very basic, right? In order to ensure that the food is of appropriate quality, appropriate standards, right? So the food reaches to when the food reaches to the consumer, it's of high quality, it's safe and it's free from all contaminants. So we need to conduct all these analysis. So if you see the next point, the food is analyzed for variety of reasons. So yeah, if you see, there are a variety of reasons. So first and foremost is compliance with the legal regulations. So yeah, this is the first and foremost why food is analyzed, because FSSAI, they have made it mandatory. Even I taught you in my previous classes that there are various businesses. I think we read this in schedule 4. So there are various businesses which need to have a lab in their manufacturing unit, that is mandatory. So why these labs are mandatory in those food businesses? Because they have to adhere to the compliance which is set up by FSSAI. So the first and the foremost reason is of using this analytical technology is to ensure that the food is in compliant with the standard rules and regulations set up by the FSSAI. And again, then the labeling requirements, even these are provided by FSSAI. Then assessment of product quality, then determination of nutritional value, then detection of adulteration, then research and development. So these are the major reasons why the food must be analyzed on first place, right? So now guys, let's talk about something about instrumentation. So if you see, why do we need instrumentation in food analysis? So as I taught you in the basic instrumentation which was available in 1990s, so those results were not up to the mark. Those technologies were superb, but again, those could be easily cheated by these food business operator, right? So now, due to complex nature of food matrix, and also is, food is a very complex matrix. It has all nutrients, it has additives, it has fats, it has oils, I mean, thousands of things, right? And food is a very, very complex matrix, and it becomes impossible to accurately analyze one component in the presence of other using classical method of analysis. Yes. So this is what I was talking about. Yeah. As we read yesterday, guys, is my voice audible and clear? Just confirm me in the comment section. So yeah, I mean, the very nature of the food, since it's very complex entity, right? So the food is very complex, and it becomes impossible to accurately analyze one component in the presence of other using classical methods. So you remember we read about classical methods yesterday. So in that, it's very difficult to analyze multiple parameters at a same time. So that is why new instrumentation, there was a need, there was an urgency to develop new instrumentation. So if you see why food is a complex matrix, because it has all nutrients, I mean proteins, then fats, then different minerals, then salts, right? Then also nowadays, with the advent of new technology, even the people who do adulteration, they are becoming more smarter and smarter, right? You can easily go and search anything on YouTube these days, right? So even these people who do adulteration, they have become very smart. And also then additives, there are a lot of different additives which are used in your food, right? So I mean, these are the basic reasons which makes the food very complex entity. So that is why we require fast and precise and accurate technology which can give us result faster, and at the same time this should also be accurate, right? So now there is a criteria why on which we need to select this technology. So first of all, the criteria is precision. So precision is very, very important, right? So it should not be like we have run a test for finding the adulterants, but we are wrongly identifying the food additives which are important for the food. So I mean, precision is very, very important. Then reproducibility. Reproducibility means it should give, I mean, uh, if you run different tests at a different time, so the result should be same, right? So that is what is meant by reproducibility. Then accuracy. Accuracy, again, I mean, it's similar to precision, right? So simplicity of operation, this is also required, although the technology is complex, but it should be the user who uses it should be very simple to operate. Then again, speed, then sensitivity, and the nature of food metrics. So all these are the factors based on which if any food analyst or the food scientist, they need to conduct food analysis, so they keep in mind all these points, right? So now we'll talk about the instrumental techniques in food analysis. So the type of instruments, or other technology, newer techniques, modern techniques basically, which are used these days. So now we'll talk about all these three technologies, right? From the examination point of view, only these three technologies are important. So first of all is chromatographic techniques, then hyphenated techniques, and spectroscopic techniques. So these are the important techniques, and I mean, you can just expect one question from this, not more than that, right? So first of all, guys, let's talk about chromatographic techniques. So I mean, definitely, since you guys are from science background, so you would have done chromatography at least once in your lifetime, right? Your graduation time, or yeah, not in 12th obviously, but in graduation definitely, right? So chromatography, if you know, is defined as a process by which solutes are separated by dynamic differential migration in a system consisting of two or more phases. So normally, if you recall, I mean, if you recall your graduation days, so the basic chromatographic technique which you have performed would be thin layer chromatography, right? So in that, you would have read about, there is something known as stationary phase, then there is something known as moving phase, right? So this chromatography, we'll talk about this in our next slide. So in chromatography, majorly there are two phases, right? That is, one is stationary phase and another is moving phase. So one of which moves continuously in a given direction called a mobile phase, and in which the individual substances exhibit different mobility by the reason of differences in absorption, partial solubility, then vapor pressure, molecular size, ion charge, and density. So guys, as I said, there is a mobile phase and there is a stationary phase. So these compounds, for example, if you prepare a food sample and then you load it into the chromatographic technique or a chromatographic instrument, so the sample, because those food, it has different components, right? So all those components would get separated depending on all these factors, that is their absorption capacity, then their partition, their solubility, vapor pressure, molecular size, ion charge, and density, right? So you will get a better idea when we talk about gas chromatography or liquid chromatography. I'll show you even a schematic diagram, so that would give you a clear idea. So the individual substances, the separated, can be identified and detecting using appropriate techniques. So now when those solutes that you upload in this instrumentation, so once they get separated depending on the parameters that I told you, so then they can be easily identified and they can be easily detected. So chromatographic techniques, these can be broadly classified into two, that is gas chromatography or liquid chromatography. So yeah, I mean, you would have definitely read about this if you have not used the instrumentation, but you would have read about this. So it's very, very basic technique. It's not a rocket science. It's very, very easy. So if you see, it is used to separate volatile organic components in a mixture. So guys, since gas, so now whenever, if any question is asked, for which compounds is gas chromatographic used, so this is used for volatile. Volatile itself is a gas, right? So how compound volatiles, right? So volatile is basically, it forms into gaseous state. So now that is why it's known as gas chromatography. So whenever gas comes into your mind, gas chromatography comes in your mind, so immediately related to the volatile organic compounds. So GC is used to separate volatile organic components in a food mixture. So it enables fast separation and identification of the components in complex mix using appropriate detectors. So I mean, it's a complex technology, but its application is very, very good and it's very easy to use, right? So now if you see, guys, this is a typical example. This is a typical schematic diagram which would give you an idea of gas chromatography. So normally nothing, it's very easy. If you see, there is a gas carrier. So this is one of the neutral gases which is used. So this act as a moving column. As I told you, there are two columns, that is stationary column and moving column. So it helps the, if you see, you inject the sample here, right? This is the position to eject the sample. So now when you load the sample at this site, so normally the gas, it passes from this and it helps the sample to move ahead. So this column act as a stationary phase. So now as the gas is moving through this column, also along with the gas, the sample is also moving, right? Now the sample would get separated according to its density, according to its solubility, according to its composition, right? So it would not be a uniform separation, right? So the sample that you have loaded, all the components would be separated differently in different position in this column. So then there is a detector here. If you see, then this is connected to the detector. So the detector would give you a wavelength. I mean, if this wavelength is matching to the, if there is an adulterant in this sample, so if that wavelength matches to that adulterant, so it means yes, that adulterant is present in this food sample that you have loaded in this. So now if you see, the samples are rapidly injected by means of micro syringe through a silicone rubber septum into the column. So now here the sample is loaded. That is what they are trying to say here. And the sample injection port, column, and the detector are heated to a 50-degree above the boiling point of the highest boiling solute. So if you see, guys, all these column, be it column or be it your injector port or be it your detector, they all are heated above 50 degrees Celsius, because they are heated so that even the sample, this sample, it changes into gaseous state, right? Since it's a gas chromatography, so they want to boil it. They want to heat it so that even the sample, all the volatile, you remember, as I told you, this technique is used to make the components in the food volatile so that these can be easily detected with the help of gas. So they are kept, all these columns are preheated to 50 degrees Celsius so that the food component, they also become volatile. So then the resonance is detected in the form of peaks. So as I told you, so the final results, it is detected in the form of peak. So now you have a standard. So the company of this, I mean, those who provide this gas chromatography, they also provide you a standard sheet for all the, if you want to match the results with the standard sheet, right? So if the standard sheet, if that has the result which shows that, yeah, this is the adulterant which is present, and similar peak if you get here, so that means the standard sheet and this spectrum matches. So this proves that there is the certain, that specific adulterant is present in this food. So further, the carrier gas is a chemical inert gas. So this gas which acts as a carrier, so that is one of the inert gas, or it can be either argon, it can be helium, or it can be nitrogen. Right. So guys, this is just basic. I mean, this is for your understanding. Don't go into depth. So whatever I'm teaching you, just stick to that. That's it, right? So now if you see guys, the application, so application is very diverse. So gas chromatography, if you see, it can be, this is important for you actually, right? So the gas chromatography, it can be used to test cholesterol levels in the food, then fatty acid profiling, then trans fatty acid analysis, right? So we have read about all this trans fatty acid, you know, it's very, very dangerous. It could lead to heart attack, atherosclerosis, right? So this is used to detect all these things. Then also it helps in detection of antioxidants, then preservatives like TBHQ, then benzoic acid, sorbic acid, acetic acid. I think we also read about benzoic acid, right? And then analysis of residual pesticides. So pesticides, they can enter into the food from the field, and then also environment contaminants, then characteristics of various flavors and fragrance. Right. So these are the application. I mean, it has a diverse application, gas chromatography. So now coming to the liquid chromatography. Again, guys, liquid chromatography, the principle remains the same. So in liquid chromatography, it is of three types. First is HPLC, high performance liquid chromatography. Then is thin layer chromatography. Then is high performance thin layer chromatography. So TLC is one of the one of the basic technique. So HPLC is a bit, you can say, it's very, very precise, right? So let's talk about HPLC first. So if you see, HPLC is used to separate identified and quantified polar and non-volatile compounds when in mixture. So guys, remember, gas chromatography was used for volatile compounds. Now the major difference between gas chromatography and HPLC is it is used for non-volatile and polar. Polar is nothing but the compounds that have charge, positive or negative charge, right? So those are the polar compounds. And non-volatile, this is self-explanatory term. So this is used to detect these two items when they are present in any mixture. So HPLC utilizes a column that holds liquid stationary phase. So as we talk about in last slide as well, right? So there is a stationary phase, there is a mobile phase. So similarly in this, the column that holds liquid stationary phase, and a pump that moves a mobile phase through the column, and a detector that shows the retention times of the molecule. So similarly, you will get a better idea here. So if you see, so now, this is where the solvent is stored. So solvent, this act as a, when it is pumped through the HPLC tube, so this is act as a moving agent, right? So the HPLC tube, that is act as a stationary agent. So now when the sample is injected here, so this solvent, it takes along with the sample to the HPLC tube. So now in this tube, the sample, according to its different parameters, it gets separated, and then further it is detected here. So again, the detection would come in the form of peak. So again, it can be further identified with the standard sheet that is provided by the company. So as you see, as the sample solution flows through the column with the mobile phase, the components present in the injected sample solution migrate according to the non-covalent interaction of the compound within the column. So now, as I told you, the sample is loaded from here, the solvent moves from here. So now they both combine and they go and separate here. So the stationary phase in the HPLC refers to the solid support contained within the column. So as I told you, this is a stationary phase. This liquid is act as a moving phase. So through which the mobile phase moves continuously. So now, if you see the ultraviolet or the photodiode array or the refractive index or the fluorescent and the mass spectroscopy are the detectors. So I just want you guys to just remember these names so that in case if they ask you about the detectors, right? So you just need to remember these 4 to 5 names: UV, then PDA, RI. Just remember the short forms only, right? MS detectors. So these are the detectors which are specifically used for this technique, right? High performance liquid chromatography. So just remember this name of detectors. So this is, you can see here detector. So here one of the detectors is used, right? Yes, so if you see the application, so this is very, very important for you guys. So it is used for amino acid profiling, then peptide and proteins, then liquid and alcohols, then carbohydrate profiling, then sweeteners, then fat soluble and water soluble vitamins, carotenoids, then organic acids, organic bases, then residues of mycotoxins, antimicrobial and veterinary drugs, pesticides, pigments, colors, phenolic compounds. So I mean a diverse range of experiments which can be analysis, food analysis, which can be carried out with the help of HPLC. Right. So basic, guys, the principle remains the basic. Only the application might change here and there, right? So now comes to the, let's talk about thin layer chromatography. So this is, this is the one of the basiest, one of the basic experiment which you might have done in your graduation days. So thin layer chromatography is, you just take one of the plate and you just add a few chemicals over it and you just upload the sample. So now if you see the sample, it moves. So now it, as it, for example, if you're loading sample on this position, so it moves down. So this pattern which are formed, so now these are analyzed, right? So on the basis of this, we can find out which kind of adulterants are being used. So if you see, a sample is spotted onto a plate or a strip with a micropipette, and the plate or the strip is placed in a suitable solvent to develop the chromatogram. So as I told you, you just load the sample on this strip or on this plate, and the liquid phase which is used, so it moves accordingly, and you, with the help of this separation, so you can easily find out the type of adulterant. The solvent is drawn up by the plate by the capillary action. So this solvent, it just moves with the help of capillary action, which moves the sample component up the plate at different rates depending on the solubility and the degree of retention by the stationary phase. Following development, the individual spots are noted or made visible by treatment with the reagent that forms a colored derivative. So guys, if you see here, so once if you load it, if you load the samples here, so now these samples would move as per the as per their normal action, that is capillary action, right? So after these have moved, so you just spray some chemical. So after the spraying of that chemical, you can view these patterns, right? Hello guys, is my voice breaking? Please confirm. Is it loud and clear, guys? Okay, okay, it's clear. So if anyone is having issue, just check at your end. I think it's issue at your end, guys. Yeah, thank you for confirming. Yeah, so again, when it undergoes the capillary action, that mixture, that food mixture, it gets separated according to their solubility, then their retention capacity in the stationary phase. Then once they have been separated, they can be made visible by treatment with a reagent that forms a colored derivatives. Right. So following the development, the individual spots are noted or made visible by treatment with the reagent that forms a color derivative, right? So now, the thin layer chromatography, it is not that, advanced, right? It does not give that accurate results. Now they have just combined it with few, a newer technology, which is known as high performance thin layer chromatography. So now if you see, HPTLC, it enhances the power of thin layer chromatography by improving the speed and accuracy of the separation. So in thin layer chromatography, as I told, it's very, very basic technique. Again, you can call it as a classic technique. So now they have just combined it with the HPTLC. So this is very, very efficient, and it gives efficient separation, and it's very, it's very accurate and speedy process. So HPTLC is a selective, precise, and accurate chromatographic technique for fingerprint analysis of the food products. So now if you see the application, so now application of HPTLC is instrumentation in, it is one of the major instrumentation which is used in food analysis, then determination of adulterants in the food product, such as argemone in the mustard oil. So now if you have read about the DART book, FSSAI has given DART book, right? Detection of adulteration in by rapid test. So in those cases, you might have read about argemone, adulteration in the mustard oil, right? So those kind of tests, they can be adulterants, they can be detected with the help of HPTLC. Then further separation of food color in the food samples, then determination of residues of mycotoxins. So these are the applications. Just remember these applications, right? And the principle remains the same. Fine. So guys, that's all about our chromatographic techniques. So now let's talk about mass spectrometry technique. So this is also an important technique. Maybe a 1 mark question can be expected from here. So one question can be expected from here, right? So mass spectroscopy is an analytical technique that identifies the chemical composition of the sample on a basis of mass to charge ratio. So guys, just remember, this is one of the important point of the spectrographic technique. So I think this was the question which was asked in the previous exam, if I'm not wrong. So the question was very, very basic. On what basis the spectroscopic technique, I mean, how the samples are tested, something of this sort was asked. Then the answer was, it separates depending on the mass to charge ratio, right? So yeah, I mean, this was a very, very basic question which was asked. So yeah, just just go through their basic principle. If you see here, mass spectroscopy is a technique that identifies chemical composition of the sample on the basis of mass to charge ratio of the charged particle. So the underlying principle of the mass spectroscopy is that as charged particle ion pass through the electric and magnetic field, their paths vary according to their mass to charge ratio. I mean, this is very, very basic principle. So whenever any particle, any charged particle, when it passes through electric and magnetic field together, so they separate according to their charge to mass ratio, right? They choose their path according to their charge to mass ratio. So now, I mean, this is one of the very, very basic example of a spectroscopy. So if you see, I'll explain you this in detail. So the design of the mass spectrometer has 3 essential modules. So here, if you see, this is made up of basically 3 main modules which of our interest, right? So one is this electron beam, and another is this electric and magnetic charge, which is found here, right? And another is the detector. Right. So if you see an ion source which transforms the molecule of the sample into variety of ionized fragments. So if you see here, electron beam is responsible for ensuring that the sample is separated into variety of ionized fragments. So now this beam, it breaks this sample, the sample that goes here. So now it helps to break down that sample into various ionized items, basically into ions. So these ions, when these pass from here, so now they are separated depending upon their charge to mass ratio, because here we have given a magnetic field, right? So now moving further, an analyzer which sorts the ion by their masses using internally generated electric and magnetic field. Yeah. So now there is a magnetic field which is generated, and electric field which is generated. So accordingly, the ions are sorted here. Right. So further, there's a detector. So a detector which measures the value of some indicator quantity and thus provides data for calculating. So normally what happens is you load the sample here, they are changed to ions. So ions, these are electrically charged. So now these ions, when they are passed from here, so they get separated here according to their charge to mass ratio because of this magnetic field, and then they are detected here. That's it. That's a very, very basic principle which the mass spectroscopy uses, right? So you need not to go into detail. What I have taught you, just stick to that. So 2 very important examples of MS procedure that is followed in food analysis are GCMC and LCMC. So guys, if you see here, this is again to further improve the quality, accuracy, and the testing speed, they have just combined these technologies. If you see, GC is gas chromatography, the gas chromatography which we read in our first slide. So now they have combined the GC with mass spectroscopy. Again, if you see LC, liquid chromatography, so they have combined LC technique with mass spectroscopy. That's it. So now let's read it in detail. The information obtained by GCMS and LCMS is not only useful for quantification, but also provide confirmation of the analyte. So guys, this is very, very important. So it completely confirms when you combine these two methods. So you can be 100% sure, right? So especially if the residue is present at a trace level. So if you see, for example, if the, I mean, since we read about, food safety officer, he sends sample to the food analyst, right, in the food analyst lab for testing. So during the transportation, or I mean, there is some damage, although, but he has left few traces of those samples. Very, very, I mean, sample is left in very, very small quantity. Even then, I mean, he can conduct the testing, and even in that small sample, just say 1 milligram of sample, if trace levels are also present of that adulterant, that can be easily detected by using this GCMC and GCMS and LCMS technique, right? So I mean, it's very, very precise, very, very accurate. So now guys, let's talk about GCMS. So GCMS, if you see, again, this is very, very basic, just they are combining the two technologies. So GC portion of the system provides separation of a volatile organic solution. So as I told you, from gas chromatography, we will get the volatile organic solutes from a mixture in a gaseous phase. And as each solute exits the gaseous column, so as you remember, in the gas chromatography, there was a column, right, stationary column, and it was followed by a detector. So now in place of that detector, they are adding mass spectroscopy instrument to that. They are not having direct detector. So once the solute, it exists as gas chromatographic column, now it is diverted directly into mass spectrometer, not to any detector. So now, which is capable of monitoring both the amount and identifying the chemical nature of the solute. So guys, if you see how precise it have become, because at the same time, it can also tell you the amount, even if it is present in traces, right? Even if it is present in milligrams, I mean, micrograms basically, right? So now it gives you both, that is amount, and also identifying the chemical nature of that solute, right? So I mean, excellent technique, right? So in this way, both quantitative and qualitative information about the mixture is obtained. So this is the technology, this is the instrumentation technique in which both quantitative and qualitative analysis can be conducted at a same time. Right. So moving ahead, now let's talk about the application of this GCMS. So if you see, it is useful for a number of applications in food analysis, especially from a point of view of safety of the food product. The technique is useful for pesticide residue analysis in all raw and processed food product. So one of the major applications is pesticide residue analysis. Then also analysis of environmental contaminants such as polychloride biphenyls, right? Then aromatic hydrocarbons, then dioxins, and then also fatty acid profiling in fats and oils, then flavors and fragrance in the food, then volatile compounds or other residue solvents in packaging material. I mean, these are the major applications. Just go through it and just remember the basic what happens in this technique, right? So now let's talk about LCMS. So LCMS is, again, it is just a combination of liquid chromatography and mass spectrometry. So as you remember, in liquid chromatography, the liquid column, the column that acts as a stationary phase. So instead of attaching detector to that, they have attached mass spectrometry. So now let's talk about this in detail. So LCMS is an analytical technique that combines physical separation capability of HPLC coupled with the confirmation by a mass spectrometry. So as I told you, the results that are obtained from HPLC, right, they are further combined with this mass spectrometry to further refine and to get the, I mean, accurate results. So if you see, LCMS is a technique which is used, is very sensitive and specificity at a trace residue level. Again, I mean, even if traces are present, right? So even those can be detected, because these techniques are very, very sensitive and very, very specific. And even the traces amounts, if at all they are present in the food, they can be easily detected. So now let's talk about type of mass analyzers used. So guys, again, I mean, these are the important actually mass analyzers which can be used, because FSSAI, they can just give you short form, right? So you just need to remember that these are just the analyzers. I mean, these are just the detectors. So one of the detector is simple quadruple, then triple quadruple, then ion trap, then TOF, that is time of flight, then quadruple time of flight, QTOF. So just remember these. You need not to know what is this. Just remember this, right? In case any question comes from this, so you need to know that these are the detectors which are used in LCMS. That's it, right? So now if you see the application, so the application of LCMS is, especially it is used for detection of mycotoxins. So LCMS are routinely used for detection of toxins produced by different fungi, that is Aspergillus, then Fusarium, Penicillium, and some of the mycotoxins regularly analyzed in food samples include aflatoxin B1, then B2, G1, G2, right? So all these mycotoxins majorly. So these are this technique is used to detect all these toxins. Then also residual drugs and antibiotics in the different food products. I mean, again, great technology, right? So also banned dyes, then different colors, Sudan dyes of different food products, then residual pesticides in raw and processed food. So these are the major applications. With the help of this technique, we can analyze, right? So now, guys, lastly, let's talk about few spectroscopic technique, right? So now if you see, spectroscopy pertains to dispersion of an object's light into its component color via prism. So basically, guys, spectroscopy is nothing. Spectroscopy is basically you just break down the components of a light. For example, a normal light, it breaks down into VIBGYOR, right? That has a different color of the I mean light of a rainbow, basically. So now if you see, spectroscopy also uh, I mean, it acts on the same principle, right? So if you see it, spectroscopy means dispersion of an object's light into its component colors via prism, or the study of interaction between radiation and matter as a function of wavelength. So this technique, it utilizes interaction between electromagnetic radiation and matter to provide information about food properties. So now here, electromagnetic radiation is used, and the matter to provide the information about the food particle. Example, molecular composition, structure, dynamics, and interaction. So spectroscopic technique, you can just remember this is the principle, and also it helps in the it is used to study the interaction between the radiation and the matter as a function of wavelength. So further, if you see, the most commonly used spectroscopic instrument for food analysis, so especially when we talk about food analysis, so these are the three techniques which are used. First is UV visible spectroscopy, then NMR spectroscopy, then Fourier transformed infrared spectroscopy. So we'll talk about this each technique in detail now. So if you see UV visible spectroscopy, so it is an important tool for the chemical profiling of the food products after extraction of the components in a suitable solvent. So now the chemical profiling using UV visible spectroscopy complemented with the chemical profiling with other chromatographic techniques can be used as a reference for the quality control of the food. So now further, so guys, the paragraph that we read in the previous slide, so this is the outcome of that. I mean, this explains you everything. So now, normally what happens is, so if you see here, the UV light is UV light, or visible light. So those lights are passed through this instrument. This is inside of the spectrometer. So this diagram, if you see, guys, this is the inside of the spectrometer, nothing else, right? So now you load the sample here, sample cuvettes, right? So you might be knowing what's the cuvette. Cuvette is just a small I mean test tube, you can call it. So the sample is loaded in this cuvettes, right? So this is the reference cuvette and this is the sample cuvette. So any sample that you want to analyze. So you prepare it, you just add it to this cuvette and you place it in the spectrophotometer. So again, you also place the reference, right? So reference cuvette. So now when the UV and the visible light, when it is passed, when you switch on the spectrophotometer, so when the UV light and the visible light passes, so it travels this way. So it would be passed through slit so that we can get a monochromatogram, that is a single wavelength of light. So now when it passes through these various filters, so you just follow the mark that I'm showing you on my screen. So then it comes and falls on this mirror. So from here, there is a separation. If you see, one wavelength, it goes into the reference cuvette. This is known as reference beam, and the another ray, it falls here. That goes to the sample beam, right? So now, if you see, if you see one light after falling in the reference cuvette, it is detected here, right? So, and the other, if you see the another sample beam, it founds on our sample and it is detected here. So now if there is any adulterant, any contamination which is found, and if it matches with the reference, so then that means, yeah, that is the adulterant which is present in this food, right? So I mean, this is just the basic. I don't want you to go into detail, but I thought I'll just give you an overview, a schematic diagram of this, right? So now let's talk about the NMR. Again, NMR, I mean, just understand the basic about this. No need to go into detail. So many nuclei have spin. So normally, guys, if you see nuclears, all nucleus, basically, these are electrically charged, right? They have a spin. So they can move, right? So now if you see many nuclei, again, the word nuclear, it means nuclei, right? And magnetic resonance. So magnetic means, again, magnet, resonance, spectroscopy, right? So now if you see many nuclei have spin, and all nuclei are electrically charged according to the NMR principle. So as energy transfer from the base energy to high level energy is achievable when an external magnetic field is applied. So guys, normally these remain in normal state, right? But whenever they are exposed to high level energy, these start spinning, right? The nuclei, these are charged, so they start spinning according to the external electric and magnetic field that is applied. So right, so if you see how NMR spectroscopy work, basically, so place the sample in the magnetic field, and the nuclei which are present in that in those samples, so they become excite. So if you see, they excite the nuclei sample into the nuclear magnetic resonance with the help of radio waves to produce NMR signals. So whenever the magnetic rays are passed onto that sample, so now they produce NMR signals. So those signals, they are detected. So these signals are detected with sensitive radio receivers. That's it. So if you see the application, so application is important. So if you see the NMR spectroscopy, it is used to determine the structure of proteins. So basically it is used for finding the structure. So if you see, protein structure can be found, then amino acid profiles can be found, then type of carotenoids can be found, then organic acids can be found, lipid fractions can be done, then mobility of water in the food. So all these are the major application which can be found with the help of NMR technology. So now last, guys, that is FTIR, that is Fourier transform infrared spectroscopy. So the basic principle of IR technique is that various organic functional groups absorb IR light at specific wavelength. So guys, if you see the organic, a number of organic functional groups, they can absorb the infrared radiation, infrared wavelength, right? So thus, since every organic molecule has a unique chemical composition, it has a unique infrared spectrum. So guys, as you know, all the different products, different food, they have a different composition, right? So now they would absorb this infrared spectroscopy at a particular wavelength, and then they would give you a unique infrared spectrum. So that unique spectrum would be formed, which is again dependent upon the chemical composition of the food. So now the biological samples are, as you know, these are composed of proteins, carbohydrates, lipids, and fats. So these are the basic components which are present in the food. Since these molecules contain functional groups, the IR spectrum consists of band from all these components. So now whenever infrared radiation is passed on any food, so these different constituents of the food, like for example protein, it would absorb different amount or different quantity of the IR, right? Similarly carbohydrate, it would absorb different amount of IR, so followed by lipid and nuclei. So now the IR spectrum that we obtain at the end of the experiment, so that spectrum that can be analyzed with the standard that is provided. So then we can finally find out whether, the structure is same, or the protein food composition is same, right, with the standard. So similarly, so if you see the application, why this FTIR spectroscopic is used. So if you see for characteristic of the essential oil in various spices, and also evaluation of trans fat in oils and fat. So yeah, I mean, these are the two very, very basic applications for which the FTIR spectroscopy is used, right? So guys, thank you so much. So these are the techniques which you need to remember. And also guys, don't go into detail. I'm telling you, don't go into detail. This would be just wastage of your time, because hardly you are going to get 1 mark, one question, or or 2 questions, not more than that, right? So just study it from, just from an examination point of view, because anyway, this is not going to help you even in your job. When you join as a food safety officer, these techniques are of no use to you, right? So you just have a brief idea. Even FSSAI is told overview. So just take an overview, just remember a few things, just give it in the exam and forget. That's it, right? So guys, thank you so much. So tomorrow there won't be any class. So tomorrow and Sunday, so there won't be any class. So now we'll meet directly on Monday, right? So guys, enjoy your weekend and also do study, but don't forget to enjoy, because don't take much of the exam pressure, right? So enjoy your holidays, enjoy your weekend as well. But yeah, keep revising things, right? So guys, thank you so much. Then we'll meet on Monday again, right? So take care. Bye guys. Good night.